I'm Emelia Symington Fedy, host of Trying to Be Good, every weekday night from 9 to 10 p.m. And this is Roundhouse Radio on demand. Anyway, welcome everyone. I'm Emelia Symington Fedy, and you're listening to Trying to Be Good on Roundhouse Radio 98.3 Vancouver. Trying to Be Good is a daily show where we get to talk. We just get to sit down and nut out all the painful, heartfelt, fascinating things that keep us up at night. It's a conversation. It's a debate. There's a question that's scary to share. The point is that every single day we go there. We go as deep as we can in the next hour, so you can too. And so when you're listening in, I ask that you feel like you're part of the conversation, because you really are. So I get to talk to a woman today who does it all. And I'm one of those women too, a Jill of all trades. One minute I might be teaching yoga to help with grief, and the next day I'm in an editing suite working on a podcast. You know what I'm saying? Then I come home. My job is parenting. And once they're in bed, I take to social media and I promote my face off. There's lots to do in a day, lots of hats to be worn. And right now, at this moment, I'm finding that I'm exhausted. I actually just posted a video on Roundhouse Radio Facebook page called Input versus Output, where I talk about needing that balance of input. I've been giving so much output, right? You put your guts and soul out there. So many striving ideas, creativity, passion. And then there's this wall, this longing, and I'm realizing that affirmation is necessary. It's really important. I can believe in myself. Sure, I can. I've been doing it for 20 years, but I really need you to believe in me too, to keep going. And affirmation, input can come in the way of money. That's great. It can come in the way of social media capital, comments, or exciting new jobs that were inspired by your latest post. I'm just finding out now, close to 40, that input is way more important than I thought it to be. I thought I could just push forever. And so for the people who work from home, for the entrepreneurs, for the thought leaders, it's true. We just want to know that what we think is important is actually important. We need your feedback around that. So coming up in this session of Trying to Be Good is Marilyn Wilson. She's held so many titles: author, founder, and co-owner of a fashion magazine, editor, interviewer, mother, a career she started by answering a Craigslist ad. She's made it all happen on her own time at her own pace. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about owning your career when we return.
Roundhouse Radio is giving back. Nice.
And you can be part of helping our community.
Roundhouse Radio will make a donation to a local nonprofit for every person who registers at roundhouseradio.com.
I registered.
The more people who register, the larger the donation. Together, we can make Vancouver stronger at roundhouseradio.com.
Register
today.
Roundhouseradio.com.
Our city, your voice.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Emelia Symington Fedy, and you're listening to Trying to Be Good on Roundhouse Radio 98.3 Vancouver. So with me today is Marilyn Wilson. She's held many titles: author, founder and co-owner of a fashion magazine, mother, interviewer, a career that started on Craigslist. I cannot wait to get into all of this, how she built herself a life, a career. Welcome, Marilyn Wilson.
I'm really excited to be here. I wanted to meet you since I heard you talk at TED Talks.
Ah, that's so nice. And that was my very first speaking engagement.
The power of embracing our ugly. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to start with you I want you to start telling me about your very first passion, what you thought you were going to become.
I always loved this because from the time I was young, I was the odd duck. I didn't fit in. I got lots of negative feedback, and I had an incredible emotional radar, an incredible interest in people, just terribly nosy and intense. And so right from the beginning, I was going into psychology. I was going to be the person who really understood and embraced these unique and different people that didn't fit in, and I was going to help them find a way through. And I made it all the way to a third of the way through my master's in counseling and drug abuse, totally enamored of my career. And then the professor began to speak. He worked in the industry, and he shared about his last year. He'd had 3 suicides. He had a father who was having sexual attraction towards his daughter. The current rate of success in marriage, family, and child counseling was 5%. And I realized that wasn't what I was looking for, something positive to embrace. And instead, I was heading into something that I would be a receptacle for negativity morning to night. So after I must have been 23 at the time, I committed the last X number of years of my education, and I just shut the door and walked away. I had no idea what I was going to do, and it took me over 2 decades to figure out where I was supposed to be.
Wow. That was one brave move.
You know, I've always had great instincts, and when I know in my bones something's wrong, when it hits me that hard, there's no choice.
Yeah.
I can't pretend for myself. I've never been a good pretender. And when you in your gut know something, no matter what anybody says, you have to change. And I've always been that way, and I still am. I still get a lot of negative feedback at times when people say, you can't do that, you better think about it. No, I know. And that was a no moment, but it was really, I was adrift in the sea for a long time. I just went from job to job. About every 4 years, I get bored and change, and I did ballroom dancing. I tried all kinds of things just to fill that void, because I didn't know what my life was supposed to mean anymore. That was my goal.
Yeah.
And it was gone.
So, you then had 3 children in 3.5 years.
Oh, you know, I was just shy of 29. I was so fed up with dating. I was so sick of men. I just found they were coming under the bar no matter how low I said it. And I said, I'm going to be single. And I ended up getting married to a Canadian and moving to Canada. We were given very poor chances of having children. They said we had a 15% chance, and I don't want to go into why. So they said, dive in and do what needs to be done, and good luck to you.
Wow.
Don't interfere. And 3.5 years later, we birthed our 3rd child. And in sheer panic, my husband went out and got a vasectomy because we were rabbits. So we didn't intend to have our kids so close together, but that was the medical advice. So I literally spent 5 years breastfeeding and changing diapers.
Yeah.
And after having worked from the time I was 17, that was such a shock for me. And where do you find your self-worth? You're home, you're wet, you're in your power of ugly, serious. And I'm sure you've gone, maybe you haven't, but I think in all the jobs I've had in my whole life, and I've done 17-hour days and thrown up every morning, being a stay-at-home mom was the hardest thing, because there's so little positive feedback for it. You are the brunt. If your kids aren't behaving, if they have a problem, mine had severe bullying I couldn't solve. And nobody says, wow, you're a mother? And you say, what do you do? And you tell them, and they wander away. And the truth of the matter is, I volunteered in school. I taught nature park programs. I did all kinds of things to keep my mind steady, but I never felt, because I didn't get a paycheck and I didn't have a job title, I felt I had no value as well. So here you are, taking it right, left, and center, and dealing with all these issues and working your butt off and staying up all night when your kids are sick, trying to make a difference in their life. And society kind of says,
Yeah. Well, I have to say, so I am the exact same as you in that my impulse tells me, no, I cannot do a job for a day if I don't want to do the job. Yeah. I absolutely, I've walked out. I've just taken off my apron and left. You know what I mean? Yes. There was someone, there was a movie set. I was working on a movie set once, and I was just so tired and overwhelmed and didn't want to be there anymore. I literally just left the movie set, and then they were talking about suing me for continuity issues and stuff like this. And I didn't care, because I just couldn't do it. So, bringing up the children conversation, I have 2 children myself, and I've thought about it recently. I honestly don't know if I've spent a week with them solid.
Wow.
I honestly don't know. They're 2 and 3. And I so deeply need to feel passion and to feel like I'm putting out into the world and getting the affirmation back that the only way I've realized I can be a good mother is by working full time. And then I come home and I'm a damn good mom. So I hear you and agree with you when I say it is the world's hardest job and it gets no support. And I can't do it for a week and you did it for 5 years. Or you did it for way more than 5 years.
I think stubborn people step up. I always assumed I would go back to work, and when the bullying started and my kids were not safe and I couldn't put them in after school care, I accepted that and I found other things to do. I always thought I would go back to work when they were in school. So
when you say step up, do you mean I stepped up and I found things that kept me alive, that kept my juices flowing?
I think the mother hormones kicked in. My kids were not safe. My kids were not safe. So while they were in school, I would help run programs at the nature park. I actually went into kindergarten every other week and taught science. I helped with Cub Scouts. I helped with brownies. I was always busy. There was never a point I wasn't busy. But I had to be there for my kids because that was my first priority. So it was hard. It was hard not getting a paycheck. It was hard just saying I'm a mom.
Yeah.
And I do have a funny story about that because I have been writing for 10 years and I published my first book 2 years ago. I've been published in magazines as far away as London. I've interviewed people as far away as South Africa. And when we bought our new house 2 years ago, my husband put that I was a housewife on the loan papers. I made them rewrite them.
Yeah.
So, it's because I'm working from home, he still sometimes forgets that I have a career, and I've had a hard, passionate career for 10 years now that's demanded all of me. So our family looks at us as their mother, their wife, and I've been able to accept that and quit worrying about it. And when I'm there, that's who I am. So,
it sounds like your family kind of considered your jobs hobbies.
Absolutely. Well, the hard one was at one point when they were kind of getting into the high school, I needed to make money. So I decided, totally self-taught, that I would be a dance costumer. I did 120 custom dance costumes a year, and my first group were a professional dance group at one of the top schools. I threw up every morning. It was so stressful, but I got paid, and then I could say I was a dance costumer, but my life still circled around them. So they had a little more respect for me then because they'd see me. There was sequins, there was fabric, there was thread, there was pins everywhere. And I would sit and cry. I don't know if I'm going to get it done. So you're doing good, Mom. I got that. But the writing, they don't see. They don't see me interviewing. They don't see me writing. It kind of happens in the ether. It's not real to them. And so when I started it, it was, oh, good. She found a hobby that our ADD mother is going to step back and not have so much focus. But when it started to take a real toll on me, it was very stressful. And building a magazine and building a reputation from nothing with no background took a lot. And so when it began to interfere with family and my time with them, I did get a few, you don't seem to have time for me.
Mm. Yeah, I want to talk about this. You brought it up. You have always, sounds like, just dived into jobs that you have no experience with.
That's true.
So you say, I'm going to be a costume,
dance costume. I made dance costumes, 120 a year.
Why? Where on earth did that idea come from if you had never done it before?
I a self-taught home sewer, and somebody at the school said, oh, I'll show you how to do it. And I said, great. My daughter was dancing. It would help pay for her classes. So it just was kind of a connection that was easy.
Right.
So she gets me my first class. It's one of the top classes, not the babies. Usually you start out the babies. And I said, I can't do this. And she said, yeah, you can. Come on over. I'll help you. So I walked in the door and she handed me a pattern and said, this is the one I use. You can do it. Go.
And you just had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened when you wanted to start, you founded and, you know,
writing is a good story because my kids were now in high school. The bullying had subsided. They needed me to take, after having such a big focus with them, it's hard to stop. So I needed something to challenge me. So I sat down at Craigslist and I'm looking through the titles, job titles, and there was one for writing. And I looked and there was a New York magazine looking for some fashion article submissions, and it was paid. And I thought, well, my daughter's done a little freelance modeling. I know the names of maybe 2 designers locally. And, quote, I got an A in high school English. How hard could this be? And so I sent off 3 ideas. 2 were accepted. And I thought, well, cool. I have something new to do. You know, I'm ADD, and something new to do. You're a great starter.
Right.
But you stress when you realize when reality hits. So fortunately, she just had a photo shoot with somebody that was quite good at photography. So I called him up and I said, would you do these photo shoots? I'll split the fee. And that was great. And I set up my first interview with Denise Berlin of Artifacts, who is a First Nation producer and jewelry designer. And, got my little mini tape recorder and walked in knowing nothing and hit play and said, where were you born? And 2 hours later, I was covered in goosebumps. I have always been fascinated by our diversity and how people live and how they believe. And I'm not threatened by that. I find it fascinating. She shared about her history and about First Nation culture and wisdom. And I've still got goosebumps just thinking. I walked outside, you know, and the day looked brighter, and I thought, this is where my interest was leading me. Mm-hmm. Something, they tell me, they give me, they scratch my itch, and all I have to do is give them some press. Like, this is unbelievable. And then I started writing, and then I was struggling to come up with a magazine thing, and then the magazine folded, and nobody would hire me because by then I was 49 when this happened. I was 50 when it folded, and I had no experience. I had no credentials. I'm 50 years old. Who's going to hire me?
Okay, so I want you to go back though to the whole fashion magazine thing. I love this. You were telling me that so you'd go to these big fashion events and you were interviewing people at these big fashion events, and you were kind of dressed a bit like you said Value Village homeless lady. Yep. Like you didn't really fit in. You were the elder of the community. You weren't dressed to the nines. You didn't have the clothes on. And so I love how you say how you had to start to separate mom from professional. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I again, a year later, I went back to Craigslist and said, I want to write, and met a photographer who wanted to start a fashion magazine. And after being home, I was so excited to jump in and, you know, I'm going to these fashion events totally oblivious that I don't know what's going on. I'm wearing Value Village. They're wearing heaven knows. People would still interview with me because they would get in a magazine. And because as soon as they sat down, I was wrapped. Mm-hmm. It's so about them as artists, and they've never been approached that way before. But after the newness wore off, I began to realize that, you know, I really knew nothing. I really didn't fit in with this group. Mm-hmm. I'm not even here for the same reason. I don't have the clothes. I started working with somebody on wardrobe, which helped. But I went through a real slump. I got asked to step out of a picture by one of my best photographer friends because he wanted the young people in it. At an event, and I went home and I cried.
I was going to say I'm crying because I'd laugh. I would laugh. Yeah.
You know, I told him don't do that, and he felt bad, but it didn't even dawn on him. He was so focused on his job. So, anyways, what I had to put a lot of thought into it, and what I came to realize is that we are all prisms. You don't have to pretend who I am to my family. If you listen to all the celebrity interviews, they say, "What do your kids think of you being in this movie?" They don't care. Mm-hmm. I'm just dad. They're unimpressed. Your family's not impressed with you. They're not there to support your business. They're there to be your family. And so I let go of those expectations from them. But when I'm home, I recognize I'm just a mom. And when I go out, I have to figure out what I'm going out for. What's my role? Am I there to promote my book? Am I there to promote a magazine? Am I there just to do an event write-up? And then I think about my credentials, and I accept the hard work I put in, and I've earned that right. And then I dress for that part. And before I walk in the door, I remind myself why I'm going in there. And it took practice doing this. And now it happens without me thinking about it. But we keep trying to be a one-sided person. We're not. We have sometimes you're silly, sometimes you're sad. You really have to sometimes, well, some people are naturally confident. I'm not. I have a lot of insecurity. So when I go out, I really stop and think about the hours I put in and who I am and why they want me at this event and what I'm going to do. And when I do that, it clicks me into business mode, and it's not a problem anymore. But it took about 6 months of practice and thinking to get there.
I'm talking with Marilyn Wilson right now. It's a fascinating conversation about how she created over, her lifetime, her career, and she took many different turns and she followed her instincts. And when we come back, we're going to talk about her book. So please stay tuned.
Vancouver to me is grabbing a couple of tall boys and sitting in Spanish Banks watching the sunset over the North Shore.
Vancouver to me is going to amazing concerts at Rogers Arena and just rocking out and singing and dancing and just letting loose, enjoying that whole environment.
Vancouver to me is Roundhouse Radio.
Roundhouse Radio.
Roundhouse Radio, 98.3 Vancouver. Our city, your voice.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Emelia Symington Fedy, and this is Trying to Be Good on Roundhouse Radio 98.3 Vancouver. And with me is Marilyn Wilson. Welcome back.
I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. It's very nice. We're on a little date tonight. So
I got a girl crush.
Aw, that's nice. Marilyn has a book. It's called Life Outside the Box: The Extraordinary Journeys of 10 Unique Individuals. So my first question, how in the heck did you decide upon, first of all, your 10 unique individuals and why you wanted to focus on 10 unique individuals? My impulse would be just to focus on myself.
Nobody likes their own story. Everybody thinks I think my story's uninteresting. And so when I tell it and people are excited, it's funny. So anyways, I was running that magazine with somebody for 4.5 years, and it folded on kind of, a down note. And I went into a very deep depression because it's been my brand and my writing forever. I built no personal brand. So I almost quit, and I gave myself a challenge to write something on a blog every day for 6 weeks. I wrote about throwing up. I wrote about traffic. I wrote about my parents or whatever came to mind. And at the end, I said, no, I want to write. So what form is that going to take? The magazines really weren't paying. I was just struggling, and I felt the really interesting parts. I mean, people tell me so many amazing things about their life. And in a magazine article, it all ends up cut. There's no word count. So I heard Julie Salisbury speak at a women's event. She does a writing workshop, and she has a publishing company. And I started crying the minute she started speaking. And I find I always have a physical reaction when I know I'm supposed to do something. So I connected with her. I took her workshop, and it really felt like the right direction, that I want to do these as a series, but I could take these stories that I've been sharing when I talk and in different things and really dive in and tell it. And yet the fact that they're short chapters, 5,500 words each, means you can read a chapter and you're done and you can put the book down. So it's perfect for people who are busy. So I thought, this is not a problem. My articles are always too long. And I found I didn't know how to write 5,500 words. I stalled out. I didn't have enough material. My 6-month project took 18 months. And even in the middle there, I had 150 interviews, and I said, who should be in here? Because what I really wanted was diversity. What I love about what I do is I hear so many amazing, truly diverse stories. These people all live differently than I do. They think differently. Some are confident, some are not. Some came from really high-end, really focused lives. Some people came from violence. Some people had health issues. Like, it's fascinating. You cannot make these stories up. And so I thought, okay, which 10? And I looked, and I only had 7. that went together because I didn't want it to be a fashion book. And I had a lot of fashion interviews. So I ended up doing 3 extra interviews, which was Shane, the spoken word poet who spoke at the Olympics. I did my publisher because she had a very interesting story. And I added Carolyn McGilvery from Beauty Night. So of this, I had 7 local people, 8 and 7 local or Canadian, and then 3 from the U.S. But it was the range of stories I was looking for. I wanted everyone to be different. I wanted each story to be unique. So the point for me is what I learned. As I'm putting this book together, I began to realize these people have been handing me pieces of gold. It's how I've been learning. And they've taught me to always have a team, that you don't succeed alone. They've taught me so much. And so I suddenly realized all those things I've been criticized as a child for. The ADD, the racing mind, the lack of patience, the incredible nosiness, the stuff, now that I was interviewing, had come together. And I realized those were my unique talents. And they were total negatives to this point. And there are still points that they're negative. There's still rooms I go into that don't appreciate my intense ADD nature. It doesn't always work well for me. But that's okay because I know they help me do what I'm passionate about, which is interviewing. So the goal behind this book, to put it in a nutshell, is for everybody, hopefully will read these and recognize the same thing, that look how diverse life is. Look how diverse they are. I think I ask each person their definition of success. It's widely different. There is no definition of success. There's no one right way to live. There's no one theology or politics or something that suits all of us. And if you've been somebody who has heard, oh, Marilyn, if you could just, and they go on to list your nubs that have to be sanded off to fit in. And the implication is you will be loved. You will fit in all situations, and you will have a successful life. Baloney. You will be sad and unhappy. If you still have those quirks and don't know what you're supposed to use them for, if there's still a negative in your life, you got to start opening your eyes. There's something you're meant to do with them that turn them from a positive to negative. They have a purpose. You are exactly who you're meant to be. You still want to strive to be the best person you can, but you're not supposed to change who you are as a person, and you are not meant to be liked by everybody, and it's okay to say no. We are brought up, especially I was a minister's daughter, we are brought up to have a life of service, to take care of everybody's needs before our own, to feel bad if everybody around us feels bad, and I've had to learn that it's okay to say no. I am not meant to solve everybody's problems, and I am not meant to change certain things about myself. I need to accept who I am and find my tribe and find where these things are being used. And when I do that, I move into a place of power. And when I move into that, I can accept myself because I see the purpose.
Okay, so it begs a question for me. I go, okay, so with the person listening right now, the folks listening going, okay, well, I have this quirk, like, okay, so for example, I'll use my quirk. Okay. Emelia Symington Fedy's quirk, I have no filter. It's very hard for me to filter my brain. So for example, if I'm on live radio and I make a mistake, I'll say, oh, I just made a mistake. Hang on a sec, I'll just take us back here. And I just make it so much worse than if I had just stayed silent and moved past the mistake. So it's this kind of no filter quality about myself that in some cases at party situations is quite hilarious, but in other situations, it's just like, shut up and close your mouth. Yeah. So here we've got a quirk, the no filter. So how does the person find the niche, find the thing? Is it about waiting? Is it about praying? Is it about like what you did, trying every gosh darn job under the sun until you finally found it on Craigslist?
Do you know the truth of the matter is I didn't try them for my passion. I had to live and eat. And so I worked to live and eat until the passion came into my life. So, I think you've said it though. For most of us, those quirks are negatives. and they're positives. I saw you on stage at TED Talks doing your talk about embracing your ugliness. Your rawness and your lack of filter drew me in. It was extremely real. You were one of my favorite speakers that day because of it. And I assume you have listeners for the same reason. They're here because you're very real and you speak. At the same time, there's going to be places it's not going to go well for you, just like with me.
Yeah.
I mean, I foot and mouth is a big thing for me. So you can take that. Like, I've worked with mentors off and on, and I have techniques I use sometimes that when I know I'm going to be in a situation, maybe close my eyes and breathe. If I start to, I have to be, one thing I've discovered with ADD is if I don't let the adrenaline kick in, I've got more control. So the SoHum ride that we've talked about, when I start to feel stress, I turn my palms up, or I find things, because I find if I don't get stressed and embarrassed, I've got more control over it.
You've said this SoHum thing, so we have to acknowledge it. SoHum is a Sanskrit song or mantra, and it means I am that. And Marilyn and I were writing back and forth, and she was talking about how sometimes she uses this mantra, so hum, and it's an inhale, so, and an exhale, hum, and it means I am that. And I use so hum too, and so it was lovely to meet another so hummer.
The problem is, if you have a busy mind, you need a word to think about as the breath goes in and when as the breath goes out. One doesn't work for me. I can't breathe in and then say something. I need a mantra that goes both ways. So I find that works. The other one that works is turning my hands up. But I've shared with you, I began to do it when I'm driving. Like, I'm paying attention, but I'm doing so hum in my mind and watching the stuff, because I'm trying to just be in the moment instead of think about where I'm getting and how I'm going to get there, and am I going to be late? And am I, like, we go through our life worrying so much. And I don't know, a lack of filter, yeah, it's a negative thing, but it's what makes you who you are too. So you spend more time around the people that accept you for it and enjoy you for that spontaneity. You spend more time doing the activities that is beneficial in. And then you have to accept that there's just times it's going to be foot and mouth and oh well, and try not to beat yourself up about it. We are not perfect. We do not have to be perfect all the time, and we can make mistakes. It's all right.
And we're building our own careers and our own businesses out of our own intuition and intentions, which then gives us the control of kind of celebrating or accepting the imperfections. I liked what you said before. We touched on how the being busy thing, and how you've learned over a while that saying no ends up being quite a big yes for you.
Yes.
I want you to talk a little bit about how the no might open a huge window that is unexpected.
One of my, I've had many wonderful mentors over the years. This last year, I've been working with Sue Dumais of Heart-Led Living, and she is about letting your heart guide you. I mean, fully, completely, period. She one day in one of her talks said, "I don't do busy." And I was kind of floored. And she went on to explain that, first of all, you have to learn to say no, because sometimes no is a heart yes. And what she means by that is we tend to make decisions with our head. We make decisions because of pressure or obligation instead of making a decision knowing it's the right one for us. So you have to stop and know in your heart if you feel that's something you're supposed to do. And that's not easy. I get pressured a lot to be at events, to be at parties, to be at places. And when I say no, it's hard sometimes. But what that also gives you is, if you know absolutely the thing on your schedule is what you are meant to do, then you have to trust that the time is there to do it. So what she does in her day is she says, no matter how many items, no matter, not busy, you got to change that term. No matter things are on my day and opportunities, I only do one. I get up and I go to the first one, and I shut out everything else, and I fully focus on doing one thing. And when that's done, I go to the next thing. And I tried that. I have 1 week in the spring and fall that's very, very heavy for me, really busy writing, being at events, obligations, interviews. And by the end, I'm always a mess. And so I tried that this time. I got up and I just took a breath and got my coffee and said, okay, the only thing I really have to do in this moment right now is write this one article. Mm-hmm. And it was done in a third of the time. Yeah. And then I went to the next thing. And when I was driving to the event for that day, I didn't worry about if I'd get there on time. I so hummed. I left when I was meant to leave. I will get there when I get there. The life will unfold the way it was. And I ended that week not exhausted. And so it was I still struggle. I have to remind myself, this is something, if you're busy like me and you like to say yes to lots of things. So first of all, you stop and really let your heart speak to you. Am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to help this person? Am I supposed to speak at this event? It doesn't matter how wonderful or how obliged you feel. You have to know in your heart it is. And if you say yes, then you have to trust that it's meant to be. So you will have the skill set, you will have the time. It's clear that you're meant to be there. And so just be present. One step at a time, one moment at a time. It's a constant work for me to do that. But what a difference it makes. Yeah. Thank you, Sue.
Yeah. My favorite phrase is, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no.
That's a good one.
Okay.
That's actually a really good one.
I'm talking with Marilyn Wilson, and she's interviewed over 150 people. She has definitely got the chops. So when we're going to come back, we're taking a short break. We're going to talk a little bit more about her book, and then I'm going to spring something on her.
Oh, fun.
Stay tuned.
Roundhouse Radio.
I'm Kirk LaPointe. This is Our City.
Welcome to Sense of Place here at Roundhouse Radio 98.3. I'm Manal Matani.
This is live from Railtown. I'm Terry David Mulligan, and welcome to the show.
Welcome to Tracks on Roundhouse Radio 98.3. My name is Corey Price.
This is Impact. I'm Don Schaefer, and you're listening to Roundhouse Radio 98.3 in Vancouver.
On Roundhouse Radio 98.3, I'm Martin Strong.
Connecting.
Engaging.
Entertaining.
Roundhouse Radio
98.3 Vancouver.
Our city, your voice.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Emelia Symington Fedy, and this is Trying to Be Good on Roundhouse Radio 98.3 Vancouver. With me is Marilyn Wilson. She's got a book called Life Outside the Box, The Extraordinary Journeys of 10 Unique Individuals. And we're going to just kind of talk a little bit about the book process, the writing process, the publishing process. Oh, my God. So, first question. Did you know right away you wanted to self-publish? Did you want to find a publisher? How did you make that decision?
I was very fortunate. My first thought was I just wanted to do ebooks. I wanted total control. I was going to figure out how to do them myself. I was going to edit myself, and it just wasn't happening. I just needed some framework and support. So I was very lucky. I heard Julie Salisbury from Influence Publishing talk, and it was a hybrid publisher. So you got to keep the rights to your book. You still got the support. It was a package deal, so I knew I could afford. Money was an issue, so I knew I could afford it. I started with her book writing workshop and made the decision after that to move forward. I struggled with self-doubt. Will I be good enough? Can I do that? Once I'm writing, I'm okay, but the process to get me writing is like going over a hump. So I know I was frustrated. My 6-month project took 18.
Just so you know, my 6-month project is moving on to 7 years.
Oh, good. I don't feel so bad. Yeah, but you don't have a contract hanging over your head. They're going, and everything, when you're working with a publishing company, everything is timed to fit into everybody's schedule.
Okay.
So when you're late, it throws everybody's schedule off. Like you get the editor at this point. So it's okay. I finally finished and I felt so successful. I finished the draft and it went off to the editor. And it came back, and shockingly, she didn't say it was perfect.
Yeah.
So, and an editor is, I've tried to tell people this, an editor is there not to make you feel good.
Yeah.
I have a lovely editor. She's absolutely amazing. but her job is to point out where things need to be better. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you think, can't she see what I see? No, she doesn't. She sees what everybody else is going to see. We see what we've written, we think we've written. So anyways, it was a really hard, we had the war of pronouns that we found a truce on. She wanted more, I wanted less. And
what do you mean when you say that? What does that mean?
I spent so many years interviewing people, and I hate he, she, name. It's like poking me, where she felt I took so many out, it made the writing cold. And so we had to work back and forth and find a compromise. But anyways, the day finally came when I was in Europe. I was so far, I was on the holiday to celebrate finishing, and was finishing while I was having a holiday. And it went off for proofing, and I thought, great, I'm done. Then it comes back from proofing, and you have to go through it and approve it all again and find the mistakes, and you think, okay, I'm done. And then the distributor wanted some changes to the cover art. Okay, don't do that. I'm done. So then you are done. And it goes off to the printers, and then you have to come up with a launch. And I've never been the party girl. I've never been the one everybody. I had a lot of contacts and a lot of support from the fashion community. I could not have done it without them. And so I wanted to have a party to celebrate rather than a book signing. So I took a leap of faith and found a place, worried that I'd never sell a ticket. I got a drag queen. I got a burlesque dancer. I had an African drummer and dancer. I had a Tahitian dancer. I had singers. And I bought cupcakes. I launched my book 4 days after I turned 60. I'm truly Leo, the late bloomer. And there I was with this commitment, and 25 tickets sold. And I got a place that was split. If I could get 100 people there, the bottom would be filled. But these performers are expecting a crowd. And it hit all my insecurities. I was not the in person growing up. But I thought about Guerness. He's a chapter in my book, and he never says never. So when one door closes, he just works. He has been the face of his company. He travels over 300 days a year. He greets all his customers face to face, and he has done that from day one. And I thought, I can do that. So for 5 hours a day, for 5 days, I sent personal emails one at a time through Facebook until they cut me off, and then I'd work for a bit. When they let me email again, I sent 1,000 emails out over 5 days. I had a template I would put in, and then I would personalize it for each person with their name. And I ended up having over 150 people there. So 1,000 emails, and I ended up having 150 people. So you are the face of your business. You are the face of whatever you do, and there is no getting around the times you need to hard work. Now, as your career grows, you don't have as many hours. And so you have to be careful of those. But for that moment, it was the right thing to do. And people knew I wanted them there. And they came, and there were no big speeches. We had a party. We had dances. We sold books. We drank. We had a wonderful time. And I went home and I said, I've done it. My book hit #1 bestseller in 2 categories on Amazon Canada. I am a success. I'm going to make money on this book, and I am done. And I was so exhausted. I got sick for 2 days. And then when I finally came out of that, I said, now what? Now what? What do I do? I hadn't even thought past that. You mean if I have a successful launch and make #1 bestseller, I've got to work? Oh, that's when the hard work started. So I wrote the article and I sent to you about the paperback pregnancy, because really birthing a book was like birthing a baby. It just took longer. But once the book comes out, there are,
work begins.
There are 30 million books out there, I think I heard, on Amazon now or something, because of self-publishing. And the competition is huge, and knowing what to do is a learning process. And I've been doing it for 2 years now. I'm trying to write my 2nd and 3rd and 4th book, and still marketing takes a lot of my time. Social media takes a lot of my time. And I'm still trying to have that financially successful book. I still haven't hit those figures I want to hit. So
can you pay someone to do this? I mean, can you pay a publicist or a press agent?
And I know people that do.
To say, listen, take my book and sell it. Sell it to Amazon, sell it to Chapters, sell it to Indigo, sell it. That's your job. Go.
You're going to pay a lot of money for that. Most publicists, what they do is get you interviewed on radio and TV. They make sure you get in newspapers. They give you publicity. There's a lot of webinars I've been looking at that talk how to get into libraries and talk about making relationships with independent bookstores. The problem is the opportunity that has been given by the hybrid, the publishing, and the self-publishing has created such a glut of books. But it's really there's so many titles out there now. It's hard. So you have to learn to set yourself aside and where to spend your time. And that's something I'm still learning. I mean, that's not something you learn in 6 months or 1 month. And there's a lot of people that'll help you, and there's a lot of programs you can tie into. So figuring out on your limited marketing dollars where the best places will be. I'll give one example. I paid $500 to put a poster in a New York trade show with my distributor at the time through Influence. And it was really successful. 300 books went out to the bookstores, but I didn't have any media to support that. So there was no sales. So 270 were returned. So that $500 poster that got the bookstores to order it needed some sort of media thing in the area to drive book sales in the store, because the stores don't go around saying, "Oh, we have a new book, you should buy this one." You know, it's there's so much that goes into this. So,
okay. So this takes me.
I write because I want to write, and I put these stories out there because they're important. I am giving them wings, and what it takes, I will do.
This takes me right back. It's such a beautiful segue to the beginning of the conversation, which is input versus output. So much output. You have so much output in your life. And I want to know, how do you manage your input? How do you navigate every single day? How do you bring input into you to fill you up so you have more room for all the output?
Balance is hard. There's some frustrating days. For me, this last year, it's taken some casting around, but I am a member of Heart-Led Living, and we meet on the phone once a week on Tuesdays from 10 to 11. I make sure that I have family time and time away. I have people that watch out for me. The concept is Ujamaa, and that is a day in Kwanzaa where we come together as a village and we raise everybody up as a whole. And when I heard that, it struck me. And so the friends I hold close, nobody's kicked out of my life, but the friends I hold close, the business associations I made, if I choose to be a part of organizations like Heart-Led Living or Powerhouse or whatever I choose, the limited time I have, I make sure that they are people and organizations that are of the same mind. We are there to support each other, to offer advice, to listen, and to raise each other up. And we take our turns on stage. We're not in competition. And that has given me the foundation. So I have days I don't do well I realized over Christmas I really have to look at my schedule and redo things. And I am determined, if I start to stress, that I step back from everything. It doesn't matter what's on my schedule. I step back and figure out why I'm stressed, because I have lived that way for 2 decades and I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, and you can't make art.
No.
You can't make good art. You can't put the book out that is the gift.
No.
If you are incredible stress.
Yeah.
So you have to pull back. You have to hum.
My challenge right now, personally, that I've been talking to my friend Randy and different people and realized is that I've got to learn how to put marketing in its place, have a time that and close the door and set it aside, because what it's become is the worm in the back of my head that keeps me from writing. So the balance for me has to come, instead of doing all of one thing or all of another, I've got to learn how to take a breath and get in that moment like I know how, and do that one thing.
This is our last question, Marilyn.
Okay.
What are you best at?
Interviewing.
Easy.
Interviewing. I love interviewing. We're best at what we love. Sitting. If I would never wrote another word, if somebody would pay me to just sit and listen to people's stories from morning to night, I would be a happy duck. I find people fascinating. I find diversity fascinating. And if I get to say one thing off topic is just that the words I carry with me are from William Orlowski, who's a chapter in my book. He just passed away in October before the second edition came out. And every time I asked him any question about any subject, his reply was, there is no secret, just do and be brave.
There is no secret, just do and be brave. Thank you so much, Marilyn Wilson, for being with us tonight.
I loved it. This was a joyous time.
You're listening to Trying to Be Good on Roundhouse Radio 98.3. It's been a great conversation with Marilyn Wilson, author of Life Outside the Box, The Extraordinary Journeys of 10 Unique Individuals. Subscribe to my website, tryingtobegood.com, so we can stay nice and close. Thanks to Luke Pigeon, a.k.a. Luke Meat. There's a podcast coming soon, Trying to Be Good podcast. Look out for that. And I'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same place, all heart and guts on Trying to Be Good.